All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We actually have a special today. It's
Dun, 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 dun.
episode number 100, and I thought since we haven't had him on in a while, and also he was our first guest, so we're bringing back Chris Emmerson. We did some early episodes with him, a lot of good stuff. He's one of our personal friends, so check him out. He actually has another channel. It's Fish Guitar Lessons. So if you love fish and you play the guitar, definitely check out his channel. It's awesome. He does a really good job at teaching fish songs. But check us out at patreon.com/Mike and Maurice. For $2 a month, you'll get exclusive interviews and videos. I just uploaded a short video with Dr. Gregory Little that we did after we ended our episode with him. Also go to mikeandmauricemindescape.com. And yeah.
What's up, my man?
What's going on?
Thanks for having me, guys. I was trying to remember if I was the first guest on here.
You were the first guest, and we actually did a few episodes with you early on. I think we did one on...
Dreams, I know that.
Yeah, we did one on lucid dreaming. We did one on Vedanta, spirituality, Eastern mysticism, that kind of stuff. And I think we did one on...
On music?
Yeah, we did one on like fish shows and like vibration, and
Sarah did one too, didn't she?
She did one.
Yeah.
We were gonna do this thing where we talk to people about like fish shows and stuff, but then I don't know, it started getting off topic from what we were rolling with at
Set
the time.
out to do, yeah.
Yeah, it just and I'm not opposed to going back to that at some point or doing more of those. It's just kind of we've been going with the flow of what people want to hear, what I've been reading and researching myself and stuff like that. So
Cool.
Thanks for coming again.
Congrats on 100, man.
yeah, it's been it's almost 2 years now since we've been doing this. So
It's awesome.
we started rolling pretty quickly, and then it died down just a little bit. But we're trying to crank them out again.
That's what it's all about, is just staying consistent. A lot of these channels pop up, and then you never hear from them again. So try and not bite off more than you can chew. If you can only do one a week, do one a week. Don't do 15 in a week and then not show up for another month, you know?
Yeah,
It's like it really is like practicing an instrument. It's more important to do it every day, even if it's a little bit, or like doing what you can, instead of cram. And you got to just be consistent.
Consistent.
It's the whole thing,
absolutely.
Perfect.
So what have you been? So you do the fish thing on the side, the guitar lessons and stuff like that. Have you seen? Because we've had some issues with. We just had a issue with. It was Discovery Channel. They put a. They had had one of our videos taken down, even though we've never used anybody's clips, audio, visuals. Everything's all us, all house. Even the images I license through Adobe. So.
Yeah, Michael's very scrupulous about this. He's giving me a hard time about using wave sound effects and stuff.
So have you seen any of that blowback? Because we just won a copyright thing back and forth where, like, again, I think it was a mistake on their end, just quickly clicking on it or something along those lines and not actually looking into the material.
Yeah.
But have you had any issues?
Funny you should ask. I did. I had 3 lessons taken down, but I actually just checked before we got on. I was curious because somebody had left a comment about it or whatever, and I went back, and then so I disputed it, and then they put them back on. Mm-hmm. So
nice.
Originally they just took them down, and nobody said anything or whatever, and then I said, I did the dispute, and you can write them a message. I was just like, look, I'm just teaching people how to play these songs for free. I mean, I put an ad on the thing if you want. There's only a couple. There's not like there's all these views you're missing out on revenue. You know.
Well, you're monetized, but you don't put ads on, right?
I don't know. I'm not. I don't think I'm monetized.
Oh well, you could qualify to be monetized, but I think you choose against it. So.
I just don't do that. Yeah, but they could do it. They could put an ad on if they have a copyright. I don't.
Well, apparently they can do whatever they want.
They just take it right down.
Well, that's what the thing that they're passing today is. They're clarifying and writing everything out more clearly. So, like what Maurice is saying, if they don't like what you're doing or you're doing something messed up or trying to get around the rules or something, they have the ability to take you down now. So I think
it's like a casino. If they don't like the hat you're wearing, they have it in their rights to ask you to leave.
Casinos can do that?
Yeah, they can just go, you're out of here. They also can not pay you if they feel a reason to.
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Well, you would
Well,
know.
yeah.
You would know better than.
I haven't really had an issue, but I have gotten into an argument. I placed a bet. I was playing craps, and long story short, I made a bet that I was constantly making. I hit the bet, and then the guy said that I didn't make the bet. I sat there and argued. Everyone around me was like, he's been doing that the whole time. I was betting a hard 8. And I was just arguing and arguing. I just told him to check the tapes. If you check the video, you'll
Right.
see me make my bet. But it was $50 to them, is nothing, and
Yeah.
it was just a waste of their time. But they wouldn't do it. They don't care. They
So,
don't care
but-
about you.
Who took the video down? Because I think it says who the person is.
I think
It wasn't. I can't imagine Fish being the ones that.
no, it was WMG. Is it Warner Music Group?
Okay,
Yeah, it's probably
so
whoever they're licensed through.
there's a few of there's like Universal Music Group that people have issues with, and yeah, I think the Warner's Music Group probably. Or yeah, that's probably what it was.
The stuff
Yeah.
he does is very sticky because he's literally putting copyright songs on his channel.
It's not sticky at all. It's pure and simple fair
Right.
use. I'm an educator.
I was telling.
Right.
Yeah, it is
I
fair
have
use.
people hear the actual music if they're going to
Right.
learn how to play it. It's not. I'm not.
We do episodes like
plus
that now
when
too. We do slideshow ones where we'll use information and make slides and stuff like that. I always put it under education because number one, it is education, and number two, if there's something in there that comes from a book or some piece of knowledge or something like that, you always want to either try and vocally give somebody credit or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, you should have no issue since you are teaching these songs and not just playing them to make money.
Yeah, I'm just teaching them. And I also go through all the time. I mean, it takes me hours upon hours and hours to write out the transcriptions. I give those away to anybody that asks for them. So it's not like I'm not even. I'll tell you what, that publishing is a big moneymaker. Like when I teach music and let's say I have to look up a piano song.
Right.
I mean, if you look up, like there's an app I use to download the PDF of the music. I mean, that costs like $6 a song. I mean, think about that. If you go to listen to a song, you buy a song on iTunes or whatever it is.
99 cents.
Or yeah, $1.29 or whatever
Yeah.
it is. For the actual music,
Right.
and then for the sheet music, that's like $6-7. If it's a popular song, they crank it up to like $10.
Right.
I'm just talking about just for the sheet music. It's like something is out of whack here,
Well,
Have you thought-
humans have always been able to monetize the papers. They can't. You can't really charge for the sounds floating through the air. It's a lot harder to do that. The paper, on the other hand, they can
Well,
charge
I'm
you
saying
up.
the actual recording, when you go to buy it off of iTunes, the actual music, the piece of art itself is $1.29. And the sheet music that just tells you hypothetically how to play it is like $5. I don't understand how that makes any sense.
Yeah. But that's
But-
good that you did the counter thing because I think a lot of times what happens is these videos get taken down for what they say is, copyright stuff, but there's actually nothing copyright about it. What's happening is, for us, it was they must have seen the thumbnail, the length of the episode, and assumed that we were either streaming whatever episode they thought that they were or whatever. But again, it's just us two talking. So if you're telling us that copyright includes us just talking about an episode, then I think
Then
that
we're done for.
we're headed down a path where it's like you can't even talk openly anymore because what you're saying
using
is,
words
your
that
thoughts
they-
are copyright infringement, which doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that's good that you got that cleared up. Do you?
Yeah.
What about doing like live versions of songs? Do you think that would be different? Do you think?
Well, that's what I'm doing for the next one. So
Yeah.
the 3 that were taken down were off of Rift. So it must be whoever has the publishing, WMG or whatever
Isn't
it
it
is.
Elektra? Was their
That's
record
who they're
company?
at. Yeah, but who owns them? Because
Yeah, but then as far as I understand, then they hire another company that gathers the funds, like from the royalties or whatever they do. So
Right.
that then there's another company that is hired by the record because there's the record company, there's the publisher, then there's the all this other mess, and then this is what you get, But at least, yeah, I mean, it looks like they put it back, and And yes, I mean, that's why now I'm kicking myself, because I went through doing a live transcription is way harder than doing the studio version. And now I spent all this time with the live version. I could have just done the other one.
Right.
So now,
yeah, especially with Fish, the studio song could be 3 minutes. The live one might be 20 minutes. So
it's a massive difference in effort on my part.
yeah,
The transcription's like 50 pages of paper.
it's
Yeah.
going up and down on one note for.
Yeah.
But no, man, I enjoy your channel. I know people have been slowly but surely finding it, so keep going with that. And
Well, look, there's a lot of, when I was playing in my band and we had to cover a Fish song, there's a lot of like shitty videos on how to play songs on YouTube, especially Fish ones where the people aren't playing the
misinformation.
Well, they're playing either in a different part of the fretboard, or they're doing just different techniques that aren't what's being done by Trey and stuff like that. So I think you do a good job of trying to make it as authentic as possible, and there's a lot of people just adding their own style into it and teaching it that way. So I like that about it.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks.
But so let's change gears here again. 100th episode. I thought it would be only appropriate to bring you back on since you were our first guest, and we've talked with you about everything from Eastern philosophy and Vedanta to UFOs to music. And do you still go deep into the Bhagavad Gita and all that kind of stuff? Are you still on the path of knowledge and learning, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, here, actually, hold on. Let me show you something.
Yeah, that's a good question. I wanted to know if there was any significant breakthroughs he's had, so maybe we can ask him about that.
So I do a weekly study group here in Grosse Pointe. We just so this book right here is one of the most important books I've ever read. It's like a so the Bhagavad Gita.
It's called Vedanta Treatise for anybody that is listening.
Yep, and it's by the Swami. Anyway, so we have a group once a week, and we get together, we read a little section, and then we just discuss how it relates to, everyday life. In as much as possible, we try to, keep keep it introspective. A lot of times with stuff like this, it's easy to get into, oh, look at how good this is, and look at how awful these other points of view are. It can get like, I don't know, like you have to keep it. There's a poem called The Turkey and the Ant, and the premise of the poem is these ants are getting all bent out, or the turkeys are getting all bent out of shape. It's around Christmas time and in the holidays, and they know that the farmer guy's coming around to kill the turkey and he's going to eat it, and like they're like, they think this is awful and this big problem, they're eating us every year, and how dare they, these savages. And then then the turkeys get sick of the grain in their barn, they get bored of it, and they wander out, and then they find all these ants, and then they just devour all the ants, and they're eating all the ants. And then this ant goes up in the tree, and he's like, you're complaining about the humans eating you, and then you've just eaten our entire nation.
Yeah.
And so the point of it is just, keep the gaze inward and do your own work, and don't worry about anybody else. And that's really the crux of Vedanta anyway, I think.
I like that.
It's like, you're not going to, the most important foundational thing I think that I've taken out of this is nothing forced is forceful. You cannot force change through an external process. It only can come from one way.
Within.
That's it. Yeah. And so anyway, so I am still, this is my greatest love, as far as philosophy. And this is my favorite book, probably almost ever.
So do you just carry that, or do you read that over and over again, or do you just kind of refer to it?
I've read this book, so many times. This is actually Sarah's copy, and you can see, Sarah's my wife, by the way, and she underlines all this stuff, this, we've been reading this we probably first got this book like 10 years ago, and I know I've read it this is probably my 5th time maybe reading it. But you find a little something that you didn't see before, and I think it's just an absolute powerhouse of a philosophy, just in general. I think it really makes a lot of sense. And so yeah, I'm still, I don't know anything. I'm just on the path, but I think it's one worth pursuing.
Does that Swami guy, does he ever come to the United States or?
Yeah, he does. However, I missed him the last couple times, but his daughter is awesome too. She's kind of like taking, he's like 90. How old is he? He's 90, over 90.
Yeah.
And so his daughter is probably, more middle age. Maybe, I don't know if she's in her 50s or what, but she's awesome. Her name's Sanandaji. And she comes every year and does a Bhagavad. She does a chapter from the Bhagavad Gita and digs into it and tries to relate it. And what's really cool about her and then just this school of these swamis is they're very they make it a point if they come here to reference Western poets or they try to connect it. They try to connect. That's all. They're just trying to connect it to stuff that people might be more familiar with, because it can be a little jarring to hear some of the concepts just, on their own without hearing something more familiar too. So they do a really good job, and they're funny, you don't want to take this stuff. You can't take life too seriously, or else you're just, you never will get anything done,
Exactly.
They're pretty funny too. I think humor is really important, which is why it's a little sad that humor and comedy, as you've probably seen, Hogan, it's taking a beating because you're not allowed to say some things. You're not allowed to poke fun at certain things. And it's like, you got to have humor, in comedy. And
Right.
I think a lot of that comes from obviously the sign of the times, like you were saying, but you have the comics are the ones fighting back right now. I mean, if you look at all the podcasts and all the stand-up, especially the comics from the West Coast that all do that Comedy Store regularly. A lot of those people have podcasts where they'll push the boundaries on what they're saying, the way they joke around about things and what they say. So they don't. I think you see that as like a pushback, and those people understand what's going on, so they're more likely to get out of the comfort zone and say some things. Sometimes a lot more people might be afraid to say, or might censor themselves a little bit, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I've definitely noticed it and felt it, but I'm trying to get back to the old way and just trying to stay true to myself. If I think it's funny, I'm going to put it out there, and if we get banned, we get banned. That's just the way I've been looking at it. What are you going to do? You can't try and be something that you're not.
Check out his comedy channel, Fat Earth Comedy.
Fat Earth Comedy. But no, in the writer's room, when we're just talking, stuff comes out, and if it's funny to me, I'm going to go with it. Like I said, I'm not going to shelter myself too much. Again, I'm not going to say certain things. You just can't say that. But, like you were saying, it's comedy. Everybody should find light in their own life, race, gender, all that stuff. It should be open for fair game, but nowadays it's not. We're not going to go too deep in there because we do want to keep this channel going.
Yeah, I think I just think what it comes down to is if you're attacking somebody, then that's not necessarily a good thing. But if you're making
that's not a good sign of comedy anyway.
Right,
if you're attacking, that's not funny in the first place.
It's tacky, and it's usually doesn't really make anybody but the people that shouldn't be laughing laugh. So
right. See, for us, a good example, we take the skit Roseville, we're making fun of the city. We're not necessarily making fun of the city Roseville, but people living in Roseville actually laugh at it. That's when you know that you have something kind of good, is, if the people from that area can laugh at it too. So you're not so offensive where you're offending people, but at the same time you are bringing into light some of the funnier characteristics.
Well, that's like when you're, somebody, maybe your wife or your girlfriend or whoever points out a funny little thing about your personality, and you're like, yeah, that it's like, it is true, so it is funny, but then you're kind of you're like, yeah, I do that. That is kind of annoying. That's kind of like the Roseville thing. It's like it's funny because there's truth about it. It's
right.
like a little.
But
funny
it is a very thin line, so you gotta be aware of that.
You gotta, you're laughing at stuff that is funny, but then you're like, because there is like a commentary to it too, in a way, But bottom line, I mean, to tie it back to Vedanta, again, nothing forced is forceful. So what do you want to force? If you're trying to force, you can't say this, you can't say that, force this, force people to say that, force them not to say this or that. ineffective, because what you do is you take the people, they don't stop saying what they were saying, they just got kind of go underground, and they do it some other place, or no, like you can't get rid of, like, there's ugliness in the world, you're not getting rid of that, it's not happening. You can either suppress it, or you can just let it. The best thing to do is just let it air out and let people call it out if it's not a good idea or whatever. But
what does Vedanta say about that? Because if you think about it, there is no good without evil. There is no light without darkness. There is no, you could go on and on with all the dualistic features that we experience every day. But what do you think, or what is your interpretation of Vedanta when it comes down to that stuff? Is it just that's just how it is, or there's a certain reason for that, or
what? There's certain reason for what? Or
like I said, like the balance of like light, like you wouldn't even know what good was if there wasn't an evil to compare it to, or you wouldn't know what light is if we didn't know what darkness was, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's a big topic. I mean, what do they say about that? Well, I think first of all, anything as far as dualism or polarity is only illusory, because everything is just the self. So it's kind of like if you're in a dream, you're a character in the dream, and then there's this whatever, it's a nightmare, and you're running from some creature or some kind of thing,
right?
And you're running, and it's scary, and this thing is going to eat you, or whatever is going to kill you, or so there's this seemingly good and then evil, but it's all one mind. There's only one. It's one mind that's playing the role of the good guy, and one mind that's also playing the role of the bad guy, and ultimately you have to wake up and become the waking person. Sure. and then you leave that behind and realize, no, there wasn't ever two characters, there was only one. And then similarly, I think they would argue that in the Vedas, that you're making the same mistake in waking life, assuming the duality here is real, and that this is real, and then it's the same mistake we make as the dreamer.
That's pretty interesting. I like
that.
So
you're in there, you're in the dream, you see these different characters, you even have these things where you're like, oh, it was you, but it was this, and it was you, but that. And it's like, no, it's just there's one person lying in bed sleeping, imagining the whole thing. There's not all these different things going on. You look in the dream, oh, there's a house, there's this house, and there's separate houses. No, there's not. There's only one mind, not, so it's illusory, I think, is. I mean, not, like, I'm no, master of anything, but that, as far as I can tell, it's all about waking up and becoming the self, merging with the self.
Well, the I. There's a lot of people that have suggested, the philosophers and scientists and different people have suggested that over the years, that it's this universal one, or this universal consciousness. And we actually had on a guy named Seth Shostak or Kostek, I'm sorry. And we did the episode. Maurice didn't jump on there because we couldn't figure out, for some reason it was bogging down when we had 3 people in. But Seth, his philosophy on the whole thing is, he wrote this like paper and has this YouTube channel where he tries to describe kind of what you're saying, that our senses lie to us, and that there is knowing. When you experience life, you are knowing. There's no separation between anything. It's just it's this one thing, and it's living itself out through all these different facets, basically. And he's, again, you can check out his YouTube channel. He's got short videos and stuff where he talks about how vision can lie to you. It's just our faculties and our perceptions and our senses is just what we've evolved them to be. It's not necessarily the objective way that this universe is, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, you're making a colossal mistake if you assume that what you're seeing is objectively true, like ultimate truth. I mean, I think that's just absurd. you know.
Well, you
Yeah.
can see that, like, just from memory, that you get in an argument with your spouse, both of you have an account of what happened. Now the truth probably lies in between both of your stories.
Yeah. Now the guy, your guest Seth that you were talking about, I recently, so I've been, you guys ever watched that Closer to Truth series where he just interviews different cosmologists or philosophers or theists or
No,
atheists?
what's that? Is that on TV or?
He's got a YouTube, but I think it was a PBS
Okay.
originally. But it seems like he does his own thing now. I don't know, but it's a cool show. But he had a guest on, and then I kind of went down the rabbit hole and started watching his stuff. But he his name is Donald Hoffman, and he says the same thing, where the analogy he uses is that what we see with our perceptions are kind of like the desktop icons on your computer. So like when you look at your email, there's a little picture of a little envelope, like a little cartoon thing, and you
Yeah,
press.
I've heard this before. Yeah.
And he's like, that's a useful lie. There's no envelope and there's no thing inside with mail in it. He's like, there's zeros and ones, and the whole thing about it is it's a purposeful oversimplification because
Dumbs it down for you.
it dumbs it down so you can actually use it. Because if you were to have to be the one to worry about the bits and the ones and these, all this kind of stuff, you would never. The point he makes is you would never get an email sent. You just never would get it. So the whole the whole thing is, it's there to serve a function to simplify things. And he makes the argument that our perceptions are serving the same kind of purpose. They're useful lies, to help us orient ourselves and make our way through the world and survive.
Because the truth, we might not even be able to physically understand it.
Yeah. Well, in the Vedas, that's the main point is that it can't be understood intellectually. You can't. It's not it's a becoming. That's why it's self-realization. You're realizing, you're awakening, like the dreamer awakes to the waking state, and then realizes after, oh yeah, there wasn't multiple people in my dream. It was only my mind. And then they would say everything in your life is like that too. I was just teaching a piano lesson last night, and the student was feeling, you guys are musicians, you sometimes get in that plateau and you're like, man, I just can't.
Right.
I've been there for years, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah. He was like, I can't, and I can't. And I was like, man, listen to yourself. Every other word is I can't. If you're telling yourself that, that's just what you're creating. I know that sounds like silly or woo.
I always used to just put it down for a couple days and then come back to it. For some reason, that works for me, especially with music. If you can't figure something out, or you've figured it out, but your fingers aren't just jiving with what you're not catching up with your brain, I just put it down for a couple days and then come back to it. I'm like, oh, okay, we're good now.
You got to break out of the mold.
But ultimately, the main point is that you create what you create.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's the thing. When you meet these Eeyore types where everything's negative, it's like, well, your life isn't getting any better from that. So even if it is like a placebo effect, you're generating. Well, I don't believe it is. I think you generate good energies, and then that can lead you to. Michael was always saying, I'm gonna will this podcast into submission. I don't care what happens. I'm gonna keep. We're gonna and. It's all been growing, so nothing comes easy. But if you generate good things and surround yourself with good people and good thoughts, I feel that can increase your odds of having good things happen to you.
I think that the way you put that, I'm going to will it in. That's a special thing about a human. You can will something into. Something can start as this thought, and we talk about where do ideas come from. I don't know. What is a thought? Like. You can go the whole, it's the brain is firing and doing this or that. But the fact is, you have this abstract, non-physical thing, okay, like an idea, whether you can say it came from this or that, but when we're talking and we're speaking it out, it's not it's a thing that's it's in this kind of weird state. We're talking about something that like, let's say that you envision where your podcast is going to be in a year. That's something that doesn't exist, but you're creating it. You're willing, and it's going to look different than what you picture, but the point is you're molding it and you're willing it into existence. And that's kind of like, that's the special thing I think about well, one of many things especially about being a human is you can do that. I mean, that's why as musicians, that's why I love music so much. It's the closest thing to the divine that I can get or think of, because you're actively playing a part in creation, you know. Sure. And that's I don't know if that's not, you know, pure magic. I don't know what is.
Well, we've been talking a lot about that, and because I've been researching a lot of ancient philosophy, Greek philosophy, pre-Socratic philosophy, and what we're talking about. So Parmenides, I don't know, it was like 400, 500 BC, was talking about these things, about how our senses lie, and there's just this one thing or this one world, and we just can't fathom it based on our senses. And then Zeno, his student, backed him up with a bunch of paradoxes that we know now, some of them to be false and whatever. But these things have been thought about forever, and I was just, when I study this stuff, I'm just trying to go back to the root. Like, what was the root of all this? What's the cause of all this? And I keep going back to this thing about how writing and language might be the catalyst for consciousness or evolved consciousness, in the sense that it is almost like magic when people talk about magic being real or whatever. I think that language and writing is magic, in the sense that, for instance, so take a law, for example. People abide by the law. Why? Because it's written down, and if you break it, even though it's not a tangible thing you can put your hands on, but it's this thing that we're all participating in, and if you break it, you go to jail, or you break it, you get in trouble, or whatever the case may be. Now, you look at ancient times, and who were the people writing this stuff? You had scribes, and then there's scribe gods like Thoth from ancient Egypt, who is considered a pretty magical, mystical being. And I just think that when you look at the catalyst of consciousness, when we started writing things down, when we started recording things, then we all start participating in the same game, if that makes sense. And then it builds this world, and it's almost like it is almost like a simulation in ways, or like let's say you're playing The Sims, where you're building it up slowly by this or that, and then everybody's participating and that kind of a thing. But I'm not saying that's obviously for sure what happened, but that's just been my thinking from researching all this stuff and looking at the way of the human mind. And I'm sure that hunter-gatherers and Neanderthals, and they were all communicating with each other too, but it was probably more all oral, or like a lot of the ancient stuff's all oral tradition. So I think that's a whole different ball game than when you start actually recording things, and then people reading those things and influencing those people, which influences, and then you get generations and generations of people being influenced by this stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about language a lot recently. I think that it's a massive part of being a human. I mean, it's the fact that we can use these symbols. You know, a word is just a symbol. Mm-hmm. It's just a thing that's it's like a vessel that's supposed to hold an idea. And it's a way you kind of send it to somebody else, and you say something, and then we're sharing something. But then the thing I've been thinking about with language is that I think a lot of times we have like the surface level thing that we're saying, but then always we have this other sub conversation happening. Right. If somebody, let me think of an example. Well, just a simple thing, like, and sometimes it's, again, a useful lie. Like, it could be tact. You know, oh, how do I look in this, this dress or this outfit? And you're like, you look great.
Right.
Yeah. One part of the conversation, and there's a different thing. Like, you might be like, oh yeah, but does it, do you wear a sweater with that? Or you're like, you could like say,
let's get something else on her.
You really don't look good, and but you're saying it in a different kind of way. There are all kinds of things. I feel like all the time where there's the surface level thing that we're saying, which isn't really what we're ever really saying. Mm-hmm. There's always this sub conversation that happens. You have to like dig a little deeper sometimes to see what somebody's actually meaning to say. You know,
Yeah, I feel I'm pretty adept at I when I might give my girlfriend gifts and she's like, oh, if she says thanks in a different tone, I can immediately pin
Oh,
up. You don't like that, do you?
yeah, you should.
Don't lie to me. I know what's going on here. I know
But
how.
I think that it's the same thing we were talking about with perception in general. It's like and I think it's also, you know, like the part of the trouble in the current time that I feel like we're getting into is that words they don't work very well if they don't have constancy. Like if the meaning of a word doesn't mean that anymore, and then we just morph it, and that is a natural thing that happens. But if you start saying, you know, this is what liberal means, it's like, really, I thought liberal means you like liberty and you like you like value freedom, you know,
or even the word cool. Like, think about the word cool.
Yeah,
if somebody had to transcribe that like 100 or let's say 1,000 years from now, after the English language is gone, what would they think about cool? Because it's used for so many different applications.
So many things change like that. So I mean, but to tie back into the perception thing, I think that the fundamental default position should be have a healthy dose of skepticism on believing what you see. You know, taking that as actual fact, or like even the words that people are saying, like, okay, you just said that, but what do you actually mean by that? You know, right. Like I had a conversation with a guy. He was talking about death, and you know, like the idea of freezing himself. You know, so that he could be thawed out.
Walt Disney type.
Yeah, cryogenically freezing. Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, look, you know, like I'm not sure if you've thought all this through. You know, like. Like I'm like, why do you have a desire to do that? And he's like, well, I don't want it to end. I'm like, well, what to end? And he was like, well, I don't want me to end. I'm like, well, if you end, what is there to worry about? If you actually think you're gonna just at the end you cease to exist, what's the problem? There's nothing. There's no pain to be felt. There's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, death don't hurt very long, man. Sorry.
Yeah, so logically, it's like, I don't know. That doesn't seem to make any sense. If you're not there, what's the problem? You know? And then he was like, well, but but I might want to come back. I'm like, well, what do you mean? You're conflating the I that we all experience when we say I am Chris with, you know, your physical body, you know, and that's you know, you don't go around, you know, I am my Ford Explorer, you know, and it's just silly. I'm not going to save my Ford Explorer, so, you know, in 50 years I can be me again, you know. It's and so I think it's
this guy needs to watch some vampire movies and see the truth of living forever.
No,
it's
but
not that cool.
I feel like that's a different ego thing than. I think it can be negative in some ways, what you're saying, that aspect of the ego, but it also kind of drives us to search for answers too, because everybody's scared. I don't care who you are. And when I say scared to die, I'm not. Some people are more terrified of it than others, but I don't know anybody that's like, yeah, I'll die tomorrow, I'm cool with it, whatever. You know, some people might say that, but do they actually mean that? Kind of, you're saying what people meaning, and do people really mean what they say? And I think that when people say I'm not scared of death, or this is all there is and I'm fine with it, I think they're lying to themselves. I think that nobody wants to go. So it is this healthy part of the ego in the sense that I think it's just natural. But is that something that we've brought into our existence via maybe seeing terrible wars and maybe seeing people die in horrific ways, whether it be disease and battles and different things? Or is it something that is this part of consciousness or this part of our evolution where it does push us because we are looking for answers, and it's pushing us further and further and further and further to the point where maybe there's a purpose behind that?
Well, okay, two things. The thing I was talking about was that the fear itself is just irrational.
Right.
My point was that it's not a well thought out thing. I don't think, you know, like if you're worried about ceasing to exist, I just don't understand that, because what's the problem? If you cease to exist, there's nothing to worry about. You're not there to be upset about not existing. You're not like, it doesn't make any sense as far as I can tell. Now, the other thing about does it serve a purpose? I think that fear of death is only out of sheer ignorance of death itself, and even just life itself. It's like, it's just again, to use the dream analogy, it's like the person in the dream being legitimately terrified in their dream of the nightmare.
Right.
They're actually really scared. They're really terrified, in the dream. We've all been there. Or you're intensely, it could be the other end, pleasure, but then you wake up and you're like, oh, that was irrational. That wasn't real. That wasn't, it's not that the feeling wasn't real, but it wasn't ultimate truth, you wouldn't say, because you woke out of it and you became the waker, And so if you have fear of death, I think it's only out of ignorance of the self. That's
a lot of these ancient civilizations looked at death. You look at birth as a beautiful thing, and they said birth and death are the same thing essentially. So we do know that some of these ancient civilizations, American Indians and things like that, looked at those two as the same thing. So I don't know where this negative aspect of death has came from. But
that's why I was asking if it's something that's built into our consciousness from seeing people die horribly. Like I said, whether it's battlefield or diseases over the evolution of our species.
I think it's from the scientific revolution where all these people are now, focused on materialistic things, and when you die, because most of those ancient civilizations believe there was more to life than just this present experience. My perspective on this from the experience of the accident that we were in was this. We were face to face with death. Like when I woke up and we were heading toward the median, for people that haven't heard us talk about this, me and Maurice were in a very serious accident, a rollover. They said we rolled, 5 or 6 times on the freeway, and we all survived. But I was sleeping and I woke up to this scene happening where we're going 70 miles an hour or whatever, we were 80 or whatever we were doing, going into the median toward oncoming traffic on the freeway, because there were no guardrails in that spot, just grass. Yeah. And so I was mortified, and I had this thing like this is how my life's ending. This is it. I was so terrified. But really what happened was after, and having thought about this quite a bit, and even thinking about the guy I was talking about that wanted to freeze himself and he was afraid of death, I think from my experience, and maybe for a lot of us, what happened for me after that car accident that really scared me to death was that I knew what I was doing the night before. I knew what I was up to in that time of my life, and it wasn't productive, and it wasn't your best self.
It wasn't my highest self. It wasn't my potential. Now that scared. If you, think about it, this is kind of what I was talking to this guy about. Think about it this way: in terms of odds, the odds of us being here, just the odds of life existing, seem to be very they're not good odds. It's not looking
based on what we know.
But based on what we know, not looking good. Either way, it's very rare. Okay, it seems to be very extremely rare. Now that's just life, things.
I want to put a pin right there and come back to that, but keep going.
Yeah. Now, okay, so take that and then add to that. Then not only is there life, but you were born as a human. Okay, then now you've won a really good jackpot. Now, then on top of that, put that you were born in 1984. I was born in 1984. In one of the most affluent countries in the history of the world.
Yeah.
To a night, and then not only that, add on top. Then I have loving parents. A lot of people, they don't have loving parents, or they don't have both of their parents. I had both my parents. I still do. They're loving, supportive parents, great family. Okay, now I'm starting to look very, very, very lucky, or not lucky, very, very fortunate, very special, very unique, and not in a way like, look at me, but I'm very fortunate. Okay, now the odds of being that fortunate are so low that what a tragedy to live on this earth, and you only get maybe 100 years if you're very lucky. and then you don't even come anywhere near your potential, you know, what kind of what that's the most tragic thing ever. That scares me to death, you know. Sure. Now that I was given that gift and then I'm pissing it away, you know, what kind of, like, that scares me more than anything. You know, what kind of use of life is that? You know, that's terrifying. So I think that when we think of death, the scary thing, if we were all living perfect lives and we're really, you know, living in our highest self, we wouldn't be as worried about death, I don't think. I think that we're worried because we know that we can do better.
Yeah.
We all know we can do better, and and a lot of us are trying. I think we're trying, you know, and we're trying, but we just know we can do better, you know. And if you waste that opportunity, that is such a tragedy, you know. That would be my fear.
Do you think it's the way that we grow up and the way that we're raised and stuff like that? I don't think any kid or any parent wants to tell their kid, yeah, you're gonna die one day at like 3 or 4 years old and nothing's gonna happen after, or something along those lines. So I think that if we started to implement that, maybe not even make it so, what's the word I'm looking for? So morose, and just portrayed it as what it is. It's just a natural part of life. Everybody dies. Everything dies. There's, besides that rare jellyfish that can regenerate its whole life and to keep living, we're all headed down this path. And I think that the way that it's portrayed in movies and people are sad and cry, and it's just perpetuated into this thing where nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to leave the party. Nobody wants to end. No matter, even people that don't have it, like you're saying you were fortunate, there's people that don't have it great that still are terrified to die, or people that have terrible anxiety about it, terrible panics, you know. So I think that it's our culture in terms of, I think there are other cultures out there that do teach this as part of their, you know, history and stuff like that, and part of their culture. But I think for the most part, if you look at Western society, it's not really talked about, and when it is, it's kind of a very morose, depressing thing.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what school you go to too. It's, if you go to a Catholic school, they're going to teach you God and all that stuff. There's heaven, this and that. If you go to a normal school now, they teach science, which, yes, for the most part, that is good information. However,
just so
they
you know,
don't know.
They still
just
teach
don't
science at those other schools, FYI. They just teach other
yes,
stuff too.
I'm just saying.
You're acting like they're just teaching you about God at those other schools. That's not. I went to Catholic school. They teach you everything, but they do focus on one. You know, you'll have one class on religion or whatever the case may be.
But that's a big question in kids' minds: what happens when we pass on? If they see a loved one pass away, there it is. Now it's at the forefront of their minds. Obviously, religions give you, kind of, we were saying before, it gives you a blanket, and it might be a false blanket, but it gives you some comfort knowing that if your parents pass away, you're going to see them again, this and that.
I've come to a few different conclusions with that. One being, there's 3 things that are possible in my mind. One of them is that you go to sleep and you don't wake up, and it's like kind of like a dreamless sleep, and that's what death would be like. The second one is that when we die, we do have some sort of consciousness, and it gets shot back into the universe as this one thing. It maybe breaks back off into a piece and becomes a person or an animal, or so. That would be like the reincarnation aspect of it. And then the third thing would just be that our consciousness survives, and maybe there's more dimensions to this universe that we can see or fathom, or, you know, science is always figuring out new stuff, but we definitely don't have it all figured out. So maybe there's something that we're missing, or something we're just not able to see based on how far we are in our evolution. But I think that those are the 3 options. And even the first one, a dreamless sleep, is not the worst. You can't think, you're just there. It's done. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, you know, the thing is, I would be more like focused. I'm not you personally. I try to focus more on, well, I know I woke up today. And I know I believe in cause and effect. What can I do? How can I be productive? How can I step towards myself? And that's kind of the end of the story for me. Like you said, everybody's going to die. You got to, your physical body is going to cease to exist 100%. We know that.
Right.
Beyond that, it's a little, it's like, I don't expect the dreamer to understand the waker. They can't. You can't be the dreamer and intellectually understand that you're going to soon become the waker. Those two states don't work together, and so you
are thinking you're going to wake up at one point.
No, you're not. In the dream, you're assuming that that's real, meaning that you're in waking. You're assuming you're in waking life in a dream. You're not in the dream like, oh, it's going to be okay. I'm going to wake up soon. You are assuming that it's just business as usual, and this is real life, and it's real in terms of the feeling that you have, but it's not ultimate truth. Again, even just in the dreamer example, your physical self is just laying in a bed, and your eyes are closed, and you're dreaming. And what I'm saying is that any other attempt to talk about the self and understand it in that kind of way, in an intellectual way, is a fruitless effort, I think, because you have to. Well, in Vedanta, the whole emphasis is on decreasing desires, worldly desires, and elevating higher ones, using them as a tool. So, for instance, renunciation is dropping the lower desire. For me, a long time ago, it was partying and living that life, dropping that desire to I took up yoga, and then I got more into that, and then you keep trying to elevate. When you have a kid, you're kind of forced into your desire for your own selfish stuff. Not by any means does it go away. We're all still selfish in our ways, but you're forced to be less selfish. Yeah. And then you renounce the lower thing for a higher thing, and you keep stepping up. And then when your last desire is to wake up to the self, to really know the self, to really, really, truly understand, when I'm going through my life and I am saying I'm the young child, I'm the teenager, I'm the adult, I'm the old person. You've said I through all those changing states, and that I was the same, even though the body has changed multiple times. What is the I? Who is the I? Why is the I? That's all there. That's it. And then anything else is I think a distraction. Yeah. So I think we have to wake up to truth rather than I think we should understand as much as we can about the world we live in, of course, but a lot of times a lot of that stuff is just chasing a shadow anyway. I mean, it's even just when I hear these guys talk about multiverse and all this kind of this and that. Well, the Vedas, they say, no, the universe is created out of your ignorance of the self. It's not a boom, this big, it's created out of ignorance, not out of something, poof, here it is, And so it's a completely different point of view.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's a trip, but it puts all the, all the onus is on you. You have to. It's like, you want a better world, make it for yourself and be a role model. If anything else, it's only that's their philosophy on raising kids, is that don't force your kid to do anything. They're not going to do it. Just be a good person, give them space, discipline if needed, but you just have to be a role model. And trying to force things, this kind of ties back into what we were talking about way earlier.
Right.
Nothing is forceful. You have to have the initiative to improve. Again, that question, are you your higher self? Yes or no? If not, get to work, that's it.
Right. Like your kid's going to probably pick up the piano, more likely chance to play the piano if they see you playing and enjoying it rather than you trying to force them to play it.
Yeah, if my daughter sees me treating my wife with respect and treating her well, I'm teaching her that that's what you should look for in a husband. Yeah. Or whatever. And then similarly, if you're right, if she sees my habit of practicing diligently every day, she'll pick up on that. Whether she decides to do it or not, hopefully the work ethic is passed on. But it's just modeling good behavior. Or we all mess up, but do the best you can. That's all. What can you do?
Absolutely. So But that brings up an interesting point too. So it's like you're studying this tradition that these people have been studying for thousands of years. Did you ever think what inspired them to create these traditions, in the sense that, okay, so do you know what the Rig Veda is?
No.
Okay, the Rig Veda is like the earliest text of all the Vedas, and there's a Soma Veda. Soma's psychedelic, and there's a lot of references to light, communion with the gods, a lot of entheogenic talk and psychedelic talk in there. I'm working on a thing right now about the migration of how the Indo-Iranian migration. We're going to do this video on Soma, and I'm working on it now, where all these people were part of the same group near the Caspian Sea, which was the Indo-European migration, and then it broke off into the Indo-Iranian migration. And then from there, some of the people went down to northwest India and became the people that wrote the Vedas, and the people that we know creating all these different themes and topics. And then you have the other people that went to Iran, created the Avesta, which would be the literature or the sacred text for the Zoroastrianism. So you have this split off at some point, and I guess my question is, for what you're talking about, like truth and stuff, is there even an objective truth? Because again, these are just things that lowly human beings have created to reason things out. So where you're talking about this being your path, which is, I think that we each need a path, and we each need a calling, and we each need some sort of belief in some higher purpose or being. I think that adds a little bit of spice to life. But do you ever question where all that came from and how that came into being? Because I do think that there's a lot of influence, whether it be psychedelics or even other ancient traditions, where again, it's just a thought process that's been passed down generation kind of a thing. So that's why I was curious. I think you should read the Rig Veda too. I think you'd like it. I haven't read all of it, but I've definitely read parts of it.
Well, okay, now first I have to take issue with even just how you framed us lonely human beings. I mean, I just went through talking about how rare and fortunate I feel. You know, no,
I get. No, you're fine. He's fine.
So when I hear things like, oh, us stupid chimps, or oh, we're just this or that. That really.
Do you never think about that at all? That we're just like repeating. We're just all influenced by previous.
Well, I haven't talked about that yet. I'm talking about just thinking how you frame a human being.
That's not how I think that, but that's I ponder these things. I think it would be.
Well, you said us lowly human beings.
Well, I meant that figuratively, but in the sense like kind of joking around. I don't. Again, do I think about that as a concept? Yeah, I do. I think it would be wrong not to entertain all possibilities, in my opinion. But that's just the way I look at things.
Well, I'm just, again, from just pure odds. The odds of becoming a human being are incredibly. I mean, they're
right.
If there were any miracle, people always, where's a miracle? Where's a miracle?
Oh, we are magic for sure.
I'm sorry,
not debating.
But what is more of a miracle than being born a human being at this time, floating in space around stars and like, where is there not a miracle happening?
Right.
I can't. Like, some people are looking for where's the miracle. I'm looking for where is there not a miracle. I can't find a single non-miracle.
I agree with you on that. Again, I was just framing it. I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
No, that's cool. Now, as far as this, in the Vedas, I'm not. I can I'm not attached to that per se, like I'm not. All I care about is the fact that there seems to be this flow of thoughts that's happening that I call my thoughts, and then there's the part of there's the I that I keep talking about that's observing the thoughts. So it's not, I'm not my thoughts. I'm actually observing my thoughts, and I want to know who's that I. Sure. And I don't care how I figure it out, but that's my life's goal, is to try to figure that out. Who is the I? What is this I business? What is it that enlivens everything? And I think it's now the concept of the self. You can call it whatever you want, but I think it's just one one, what's the best even word for it? Entity? I don't know. And I think that everything's an expression.
Would collective consciousness be?
I don't know how, again, like I was talking about words are flawed anyway, like
Right.
It's kind of like when we say we have a perception, we can pretty much bet we can bet that our perception has some element of untruth to it, like like don't trust your eyes, don't, I'm talking to myself. If I see something, I don't assume that that's actually exactly how that thing is in and of itself, but the eye is still there. So, do I question where the Vedas came from? Yeah, but it's not a big concern to me. Just like, my parents, we didn't go to church and weren't, I guess you wouldn't say we're Christian. They had the anthroposophy, which has Christianity woven in with, you've talked
We've
about
had his dad on before
Yeah.
too. You can check out our Rudolf Steiner, or one of our early episodes on Rudolf Steiner we did with his dad.
So, but anyway, I just try to, actually one time we had this kind of like awkward moment where somehow we were talking about Christianity, and then I think he was assuming that I call myself a Christian, and I'm like, oh, I don't call myself a Christian, because, and it's not because of the values of the Christ that I disagree with or anything, but I'm not gonna get lumped in with what people call Christian. I can't.
And that's the shame of it all now. It's like the thing's been so tarnished.
And similarly, I'm not getting lumped into any kind of, I'm not Hindu. I'm not, I like to read the Vedas. What it is, I like to read this specific teacher, I've read other teachers of Vedanta and I did not connect with them. I just really like this particular teacher, how practical he makes. It's just about self-sufficiency. Try to figure out who you are, where you want to go, those are all good things to me. And I guess at some point you do have to kind of stick your, a flag down and say, I'm going to check this out for a minute. But I'm not going to toil. The same thing with Christianity. I'm not going to toil over, did this happen? Did this not happen? This, that, I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that I'm here and I got to do the best I can, And
so in Vedanta, do they say, is there just like one path and everybody's got to kind of
no
follow? Because okay, so this is the way I look at it. The way we're talking about right now, I'm super interested in origins of things and root and inspirations of things. So where you might be, I'm going to play that Trey lick, or I'm going to, do that. How did Trey even learn how to play the guitar? That's my thinking usually behind stuff. So I think it's, when you look at these types of things in philosophy and what interests people, is there a path for all these different types of thinking, or is it just this one kind of set thing that everybody kind of follows, or what's the deal?
No, no. In Vedanta, you have to assess your own nature, and so some people are more, they're going to be more inclined to the intellectual path. It's dhyana yoga. There are people that are devotional. That's bhakti yoga. There are people that are, kind of more doers, and the karma yoga. Like they're out, they're volunteering, they're doing stuff. They're, or maybe they think of it as a political thing, or what they're being.
What do you consider yourself?
My path is probably, actually we were talking about this in the study group, because on one hand, I do feel a connection when I play the gospel music at church, and I do feel very devotional, and I do enjoy that, even though again, I'm not Christian and I don't even like the lyrics a lot of times, but I love the music. Connect.
But you're just shredding up there. Yeah, Jesus.
I'm feeling the Holy Ghost.
Hey.
But
Praise the Lord.
So on one hand, I feel pretty devotional, but on one hand, I feel I do get, I just for, like the intellectual part is very, it's very tempting and to go down to go really deep into that, but I can find trouble areas where I can get stuck on something, like trying to intellectualize the concept of God or the self. Like you're going to get into kind of hot water with that, because you're going to run out of you can't.
Well, there's no answer.
There's no yeah. And so again, the focus is find the path that's most conducive to your nature, decrease your lower desires, raise higher desires, and to me that sounds like a good formula.
Yeah, for sure.
And I hate to say it, dudes, but I gotta go. I gotta pick up.
Chew on that.
But yeah, man, that's my focus. Try to keep raising yourself by yourself to to be a good influence.
I think we can all agree upon that.
Yeah.
So
We'll get you back on. Maybe we'll get you on with another. Maybe we can have a real Rudolph Steiner debate.
Steinoff.
We got another one of our guys that's been on a few times, Andrew Tischler, that is super into it and stuff. So maybe we'll get you back on, and maybe get you back on with your dad too, and we can get a real debate kick in.
Oh man, yeah, don't get me started with him.
Oh, that's
well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
On.
We're going to continue on here for a few more minutes because I do want to give some shout-outs to some people. It is the 100th episode, and give a little recognition to some of the people that have helped us along the way. But thanks for being our first guest and our centennial guest.
100th.
Yeah. And we'll get you
see
back
again
on.
For number 1,000.
All right, dudes. Cool. Thanks so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Peace, buddy.
All right, I'll see you guys.
So yeah, that was a fascinating conversation for sure, and thanks for Chris.
It's always good to have a friend on. You can, put your guard down, be yourself.
Break Maurice out of that shell. This kid actually knew what was going on this episode.
Well, when you have strangers on, you don't want to go too far. That's
I wouldn't be busting your chops, bro, but I have to. It's the 100th episode.
Right.
What do you think about all that we were just talking about? Do you think that learning all this stuff, so the way we do our show is obviously I read books and do research, or you say, let's check this topic out. I like this topic. Do you think that since there is no answer to a lot of these things that they're worth speculating on, or do you think it's a waste of time?
I think that if you enjoy what you're doing and you feel like it's bettering yourself, then have at it. I like doing it. I'm curious, and I think some of the stuff we're doing is kind of bridging those two worlds from the science and the unknown, and trying to make sense of all that. So again, I think if it's helping you and bettering yourself, go for it.
Well, I think it's embettered myself because it pushed me down some paths of like meditate, introspection, having reverence for certain things as tools. So like psychedelics, we would grow up and just take things and mess around and not really think too much about it. Now, if I were to take a psychedelic, I actually look at it as like a tool or some sort of
right.
Spiritual type thing.
Well, even music. Now I listen to music. It literally gets me high. And back when you're a kid, you don't know what you're doing. You listen to it, you go, I like that song, it's making me feel good. When you get a little older, you can kind of realize how special these things are, and you just don't take them for granted anymore.
Sure. Absolutely. I think,
but
I just sometimes I think, are we spinning our own wheels? But at the same time, like Chris just mentioned, you just have to pick out kind of what your path is and just kind of understand your own nature. And I think my nature has always been I'm just a curious person. So I'm no matter what, I'm always going to look into things, whether it be the inspiration or the root or as much information as I can gather. But I will say, since I've been doing that, and even if let's say I see a video on YouTube or something that's compelling, it'll push me to do research and be like, is this truth? Is there truth in this? And more times than not, the people that are doing things don't really put in the time and the effort to research it themselves. So I usually find flaws in topics that I find interesting, and I'm sure people find flaws in stuff that we've done too. There's different levels.
Oh, yeah.
There's different levels. So,
well, if anything else, I think it's a good thing, and it makes for a good podcast. So,
well, yeah, absolutely. And I think having these discussions is probably the more important thing in terms of how
bringing the real truth,
but how we evolve as people too. I think we were stuck in this digital technical age of technology where it's easy just to text people and just not call people or not meet face to face. Or, I mean, you're my cousin. I see you far more now that we do this podcast. We are face to face. We're maybe not in the same room, but I feel like it's even made our connection, which we grew up as kind of best friends anyways, but it's made our connection, I think, even better and stronger since we live in different states. So I think that's a good thing.
For sure.
And I think bringing people together, I think there's a whole community of cool people out there that we've met through doing this podcast, whether it be the authors or guests or researchers. I've learned a lot of stuff just from having people on the show, even though I've read their books and different things. Just having them on the show and actually talking to them brings a whole new light to a bunch of other topics as well. So.
Yeah, and I do think that Chris would agree with, if anything else, we're bringing to light some of these facts that people are just convinced are set in stone, ages of, pyramids and things like that. So I think if anything else, we're bringing that into the forefront, questioning what all these scientists and scholars have told you for years and years. Some of the stuff solid, some of the stuff could be explored more, and I think we're bringing that to the forefront. So,
well, I think what it's doing more than anything is, instead of just taking things at face value, we're at least investigating things now. So, yeah, the pyramids still might be roughly 2500 BC, but they might not be. Or the Sphinx might be.
Or what's under them. That might be older, and
yeah,
they might
exactly.
be correct that the stuff on top is that old.
Right.
But
or maybe
again,
there
it
was
goes
some ancient base that they built off of to build the Great Pyramids or something along those lines. But it's not even just about that. I think it just comes down to, when you look into these kind of topics, it's nice to see out there that there are people questioning things, because what do we really know? The only thing that we can see that's beneficial from all this is technological growth, because if you look at the way that science keeps progressing, that's what we're getting out of it. I think that some people I feel like are less intelligent now from having everything. When you don't have to work to find information or work to find knowledge, you can read something and be like, oh, that's stupid, I don't believe that, or whatever, as opposed to the person that actually went and studied the thing for 10 years and wrote all these papers and wrote all these books and whatever the case may be. That's that person's life. And there's somebody looking online right now dismissing that in 2 seconds because it didn't look right to them. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that if nothing else, we're at least giving proper
credit
and looking into these topics a little bit deeper than just a surface scratch and saying, oh, this can't be true, or this is probably not true, or whatever the case may be. And look, there's people that I don't agree with that we've had on our show too. There's people that have ideas that I don't align myself with, but that I still want to hear what they have to say. I like to know what people think and why, for no other reason than I just like understanding how the human mind and brain works and how consciousness plays off that. So,
well, we're all different, and I don't think there's two humans that agree upon every single theory or whatever anyway. So that's
Right.
what it's all about, is exchanging ideas. And someone's idea you might not believe in, but the way that they looked at a problem or something might spark something in you. So again, you never know where it's going to come from.
Right.
Keeping an open mind, that's what it's all about, and it goes right with our the name of our channel, Mind Escape.
So we've done 100 episodes now. What's been your favorite episode? Let's do this. What was your favorite in terms of fun, that you felt like you had fun, and then what was your favorite episode that you felt like you learned the most from, or something?
I like the Trip Whip guy. He's always a pretty good guest, and he's lively, and
Yeah, Jack.
I find a lot of that stuff revolving around the psychedelics, 'cause I've never done DMT, so I love, no matter what these trolls say, we acknowledge that we haven't done DMT, but it's good to have people on that have, and we can ask them questions and kind of vicariously live through their experiences. How about you?
For me, I don't know, because I guess the one that I learned the most from, that's a good question.
Well, start with the one that you had the best time with.
The best time, or the one that I had the most fun with, was probably, I gotta think about this.
All right. Well,
the one with Tom Lane, because I think that there's just something fascinating about. Actually, let's do this. My favorite one that we did where I had the most fun was probably our first one with a real author, R.N. Voot. That was probably
that was a good one.
Because that was the catalyst for kind of what we're doing now. That was the first guy that we interviewed that was an author that wasn't one of our friends or somebody that we met online or whatever.
Plus, it gave a little credibility to us.
Well, yeah. And that time, again, we were just doing tons of different topics. Not that we didn't want to do all the ancient civilization and psychedelics and consciousness and all that stuff. It's just that we had done episodes on that, but it wasn't our primary focus. And I think that kind of pushed us down the path where we are now. And then the one that I learned the most from is probably the Tom Lane one, in the sense that I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about Mesoamerican mythology and metaphysics and stuff like that, and he did a really good job with the slideshow of explaining it. And after I read his book, I had a different reverence for a lot of the sacred mushroom rituals and just entheogenic rituals in general.
Yeah, that was a very good episode. I'm more of a visual guy too, so having those visuals and going through the map and him just, explaining all that, beautiful episode. I like that one a lot.
And so, yeah, I want to give a shout out to some people. So let's give a shout out again, R.N. Voot, Dick.
Well, hold on. Can I give my favorite?
Oh, I thought you did.
Learning experience. No, I said the one was more of a fun.
All right.
But Dr. Gallimore, I think, is that the out-of-body?
Dr. Andrew Gallimore. No, Dr. Andrew Gallimore is the alien information one, where it was how DMT.
Oh, okay. Who's the guy? It was him and his colleague. Out-of-body experience. He was a doctor.
Oh, so he had a near-death experience, and he wrote the book Proof of Heaven. It's Dr. Evan Alexander.
Yes.
So
that one.
That's actually a great book. It's not. Even though it's called Proof of Heaven, it really has nothing to do with religion. It's more about this doctor scientist who has taught he worked at like Harvard and a bunch of different hospitals. He was a neurosurgeon. And he was pretty much an atheist at that point, and he had a near-death experience from having meningitis, like a rare form of meningitis. And then he goes down this. He goes unconscious and pretty much basically dead in different parts of his brain that they believe create consciousness and create thought, and different things were all not working. And he had all the graphs and everything to prove that there's no way he could be experiencing the things that when he came out that he wrote about and talked about and stuff like that. So definitely check out that episode of ours with Dr. Evan Alexander and his colleague Karen, who was on the episode. She runs Sacred Acoustics. So we did that episode as a mixture between near-death experiences and consciousness, and he believes that when we die, based on his own near-death experience, that the only thing in the universe there is consciousness. So that kind of ties back to what we normally discuss on this podcast. So
yeah, that was a good one.
So yeah, those were a couple good choices, and we've had so many cool guests. It's like hard to pick.
I know,
and I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but those were the ones that recently that I look back. If I had to listen to those, I'd probably listen to those again. But yeah, so let's give a couple shout outs to some people. Again, I want to give a shout out to R.N. Voot because he was, as we mentioned, our first author guest. He wrote the book Spirit in the Sky and De-Evolution Cycle. And he connected us with a lot of other people. He connected us with Dick Kahn, who wrote DMT and My Occult Mind, and then most recently,
that was another great one.
He just came out with DMT and My Occult Mind Part 2, so check those books out. Yeah, and I'm just trying to think. Tom Lane's been on 3 times now, which was fun.
It's gonna be
Paul.
tough.
Yeah, our buddy Paul that was on a few times talking about his psychedelic experiences, and I'm just trying to think who else that we've had on that's been on more than a couple times. Oh, big shout out to Lee Adams. He's been on probably 4 or 5 times.
Lee Adams, Andrew Tischler.
Yeah, just some of the better ones that we've done, and shout out to Matt Tiller from the Tiller for Riller our go-to
Great
UFO guy, and yeah, it's been an interesting ride so far for sure.
Learning a lot.
What do you
pushing it?
So do you like where this all headed? Did you like the path that we're on now with the podcast, or because
I think we've
it's a mixed
started
bag.
with not knowing much, and now we're kind of honing in on. You always got to play to the people too, so seeing what people like, seeing what people don't like, also trying to quench our own thirst knowledge,
Well, I'm gonna be
knowledge of
honest.
thirst, if you will.
We take suggestions. So if you're like, yeah, will you please try and get this guy on? We'll always look into it. But the thing is we've been this whole time. It's been my both of our quest for knowledge. Specifically, when I read these books and stuff like that, I'm looking into what interests me. So in return, that's who the people that we have on. And I'm glad that people are responding to it. I'm glad that people find it interesting. And I think that it's been a little bit harder road for us to get a big viewership, only because we don't focus on one specific topic. For instance, if we were just a psychedelic show or just a
ancient
civilizations or just a consciousness or mind or philosophy podcast, I think that we would probably be doing a little bit better. And I see those podcasts out there that specifically focus on one topic. But I think, again, the inspiration for this podcast, and this is going to sound cheesy, but it was just years of watching Joe Rogan and thinking, I want to do a podcast where we have just the guests on that I found interesting on the topics.
Right. I don't want to hear fighters. I don't.
Well,
want
it's
to
not
hear
even
this.
that I don't. I listen to those episodes of his too. It's just I wouldn't want to do that research on my own time. I'm not interested in the UFC in terms of stats.
Oh, I couldn't care less.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I love all that. I love when he has comedians on. I love comedy podcasts and stuff like that. And you have your comedy channel, and we love comedy, but yeah, I just wanted to focus on topics like, so when he would have John Anthony West on, or he would have Robert Schock, or he would have this Colonel Fravor guy, or just these fringe things that do have some basis in reality. Yeah, and explore those, and where can we go with that? So that's always been the focus of our podcast. So, and I know
I definitely would find those more interesting than the other ones. I'd find myself tuned in longer and stuff, and definitely intrigued with ancient histories and the unknown in that department. So I agree with you.
Sure. And I think they're important too, that people know these things. There's certain things that people consider fringe that are not fringe at all too. So there's a big debate going on right now. I've been following it on Twitter between this academic guy and like Graham Hancock and George Howard and those guys, where they're this one academic guy is basically, he writes the Wikipedia page for the Younger Dryas, or wrote it, and it's kind of disparaging and just kind of takes credit away from the actual work that they've done. Like the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis should have more people on board and should be more prevalent based on what we know and the evidence that's there. And there is actual scientific data that backs it up. So it's stuff like that. This idea that there was some sort of event that happened at the end of the last ice age should be more popular, or at least should be looked into by more people. And well,
that's the one thing we learned too, is how the science is just it's kind of like the Academy Awards. You gotta tickle the right person and
right. That was
get
in
there
yeah.
and to fight for your facts to become noted as facts. It's wild. It's like the Nobel Prize. I don't remember his name, but who was the guy we had on losing the Nobel Prize?
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. Shout out to Brian Keating, who is a professor of cosmology, I believe, at San Diego. I don't know if it's or California, University of California, San Diego. He wrote the book Losing the Nobel Prize, and he talks about how the Nobel, the competition has been, it's basically like all politics and infighting and people trying to one-up each other in different things, and it's less about the actual science and merit of things. And he does a good job describing that whole process and how that plays out. But one of the main themes in his book is also how there are no real answers, even if you look at empirical sciences. So if you look at cosmology or physics or quantum physics, there's ideas of how things work, and then there's empirical facts on how things work. But then we always know things change. So you look at gravity. Gravity used to be believed that there was gravitrons, which were little
not the ride at the fair.
no little particles. That's what they're particles that cause gravity. Now we know it's more likely that it's a wave, and maybe they're both. I don't know, but it just shows you how the way we perceive things, the way science works, the way different things that we believe to be true, the things that we're taught in school, might be wrong, might be replaced. We talk a lot, I'd bring it up a lot, but science philosopher Thomas Kuhn talks about how once enough evidence bottles up, then you have a paradigm shift, and then once you have a paradigm shift, it causes a scientific revolution. Well, we haven't had one of those in a while. Is it because scientists might proclaim or claim that it's because we know a lot more and there's less mystery out there, whatever the case may be? I don't think that's true at all. If things were set in stone, they would be set in stone. We would know for sure this is what happened.
2 + 2 is 4.
This is what we would know for sure where our universe came from. This is how we know what happens when we die. This is how we know. These would be empirical things that everybody can agree on, and that's just not the case, even within the science community. So that's kind of what we're trying to say, is that things that we know to be 100% true are only 100% true to us within this time period or time frame, and later on something might come and debunk it or change the premise of it, or change little tweaks here and there. So I just think that we need to be aware of that, and that's the message that we've been trying to get out there. It's not that I love science. I love reading scientific papers. I love reading science books. I love reading science authors. But the best ones are the ones that will admit, I don't know this is my theory. I don't know it to be 100% true. And the ones that I don't like are the ones that say they have all the facts, or this is how it is. And if you look at the history of ideas and the history of science, we look back at, we did our episode on ancient Greece with Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, and Aristotle was probably the most influential on modern science out of those three, because Plato was grounded in a lot of metaphysics, and Socrates was more concerned with ethical and moral behavior and thought processes. So when you look at Aristotle's contributions, where he came up with like a primitive model of evolution, where he correlated the structures of animals to their function in the world, and he made the mistake where he deviated from what the more modern version, or Charles Darwin's version of the evolution of things, is that Aristotle believed that when there was a break off of genetics, whether it be natural selection or whatever the case, he believed it was a rare instance or rare process that was an accident, as where we know now that that's not the case. It's because it's evolving to the next stage of that being. But I don't know, man. I just think that if you look at that, and then that you can go back from Aristotle's time and look back on the ancient Egypts, or before the ancient Egypts, the ancient Sumerians, and you keep going back and back and back. The same thing's going to happen when we go forward. So Aristotle's wrong, and we know that because of this. And then Isaac Newton's wrong because we know this is about this. And then there's going to be a day where it's like Sean Carroll and Lawrence R. Krauss are wrong because of this. It's inevitably going to happen. It's not something that that's the only guarantee, is I would say, is that things are going to be considered wrong 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, whatever. There's no doubt in my mind. I think that's the only thing you can really hang your hat on.
Yeah, good point. Hey, But cheers, brother. 100 episode, we did it together, and let's get another 100 under our belt.
Yeah, let's try and get to 200 before the next 2 years are up. It took us 2 years to get that, and we've had some periods of, we'll call it the dark ages of not doing some episodes here and there, but we've been flowing recently, so.
If anybody has any episode ideas, leave a comment below. We're always receptive to new ideas, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, shout out to all of our Patreon members. We just got a new Patreon member. Actually, let me give a shout out to them real quick. Let's pull that up.
Yep. We appreciate all our listeners. If you donate $2, Mike will come over to your house this time and
read you a book. No, if you donate,
making his rounds for the holidays.
If you donate $2, we do have exclusive content on there. Eventually, what we would like to do is have 2 different tiers. Maybe the $2 tier will be for just the content that we like, extended interviews and stuff like that, and then maybe do one with maybe we'll start putting some T-shirts out there and maybe have like a $5 or a $10 one too. So shout out to Charles Garnham. I just want to give you a shout out, and shout out to all of our Patreon members. And
we really appreciate it, guys.
We appreciate it,
and girls.
The show we pay to do the show still, so it's not free, and we don't make money. It would be nice if we did in the future, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we love doing it. We do it because we're passionate about it, and we do it because I feel like there's a whole gray area within life that needs to be talked about, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent. We just want to put content out there that makes people think. So
exactly.
And so, all right, well, check us out at patreon.com/Mike and Maurice. Again, for $2 a month, you'll get exclusive videos and audio.
Yeah, that last one you just posted is a real juicy tidbit. So
I just posted one from our conversation. It's Dr. Gregory Little, who is the co-author of Denisovan Origins, did an extra 15 minutes with us where we talk about Native American metaphysics and some esoteric knowledge that is found within the Native American community and their beliefs of like origin and stuff like that. And
we're talking about our favorite episodes. That was one of my favorite 15 minutes. I was hooked onto that. I like that a lot.
And there's also one up with Tom Lane where he discusses 5-MeO DMT and Bufo aloe-veris. And I'm trying to think what else. There's a couple other up on there too. But so check those out. Check out our website, Mike and Maurice Mindescape.com. We are on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you want to reach out to us, I'm usually on Twitter the most. I prefer Twitter out of all the social medias apps. And is there anything else?
Sounds good, my man.
All right, so happy 100th episode to everybody. We will be live tomorrow with Dr. Michael Masters, who wrote the book Identified Flying Object. And he is an academic who wrote a book pertaining to the UFO phenomena in terms of he believes that maybe grays are the evolved versions of us and that they're time travelers. So that should be an interesting conversation.
Beautiful. Pumped up for that one.
All right, folks. Well, happy 100th episode. Thank you to everybody. And we're out. Peace.
Peace.